Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
Hi, this is Vik Pavate of Locix, and you're listening to the new Warehouse podcast. Today's safety tip is to leverage a software system that details real-time location data and congestion analytics to accurately identify where, when, and why unsafe interactions occur between forklifts and workers in your warehouse, and eliminate these unsafe interactions through improved layout, routing, scheduling, and training. You'll significantly improve both safety and productivity.
With e-commerce off the charts, many small and growing warehouses are asking, how can I get ahead when my warehouse is barely keeping up? The answer is future-ready warehouse tech from Zebra Technologies. Warehouses can simplify and upgrade all processes, from automated inventory management to hands-free picking, with Zebra's tailored, scalable mobile solutions. They're simple and intuitive. There's never been a better time to upgrade for success with Zebra. How can your warehouse get ahead? The answer's in black and white. Get the answers at zebra.com/theanswer. That's zebra.com/theanswer. Fulfillment demand continues to skyrocket and outpace available labor. To keep up, warehouse operators are turning to flexible fulfillment solutions like 6 River Systems. Utilizing 6 River Systems' award-winning combination of collaborative robots, artificial intelligence, and operational expertise will make your associates and wall-to-wall fulfillment workflow more efficient. No new infrastructure, no change to warehouse layout, easy to deploy and scale, easy to train and retain associates, all at half the cost of traditional automation. Want to take your fulfillment operation to the next level? Go to www.6river.com to learn more. That's www.6river.com to learn more. How do you create warehouse superheroes? The answer is simple. With visual voice scan solutions from ProCensus. With record demand and labor shortages, warehouses need more effective workers and lightning-fast onboarding. Visual voice scan solutions from ProCensus enable warehouse workers to achieve superhero performance with up to 20% improved productivity and up to 99% accuracy. Hands-free barcode scanners from ProGlove paired with wearable mobile computers is just the beginning. Improved mobile interfaces with reduced keystrokes, easy-to-read screens, custom keyboards, voice-enabled interface, and more can be realized with ease on the leading WMS platforms. Sound too good to be true? Let us show you with our one-of-a-kind virtual demo. Visit ProCensus.com to get started today. Again, that's ProCensus.com to get started.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. On today's episode, I am going to be joined by the CEO of Locix, and that is Vik Pavate. He has been on the show previously, and we've had Locix on the show a couple times. Originally in the really early days, went out to ProMat 2019, and they are focused on looking at spatial intelligence in the warehouse. I started in the dock area, which I think is what we had initially talked about back in 2019, but they're also expanding within the warehouse as a whole and looking at spatial intelligence and bringing that into the warehouse and the environment and helping to create more operational efficiencies through utilizing that technology. So we're going to talk to Vik today. He's going to tell us a little bit about some of his predictions for 2022 in our world and what he thinks we're going to look like going into the future, and also kind of a little bit about what's been going on with Locix since we last talked. So Vik, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having us, Kevin. I appreciate it.
Definitely happy to have you back on. It's good to connect again. And, how about we start off, if people maybe just getting into the show, haven't heard of Locix before, why don't you just give us a little brief overview of what it is you guys do?
Great. Thanks, Kevin. So Locix supplies cloud-based warehouse spatial intelligence solutions. We refer to them as WSI that cost-effectively increase operational visibility, provide actionable and prescriptive insights, and automate decision-making in warehouses and distribution centers, enabling our customers to increase productivity, efficiency, and safety. How we do that is we cost-effectively capture what we refer to as unique real-time spatial data within warehouses, which includes precise indoor location of assets, images, videos, and sensor data, and analyze this data in the cloud using advanced analytics. It could be algorithms, AI, ML. What's been really exciting about this solution, Kevin, since we spoke last year, is that we have been doing a bunch of deployments during this time, and customers who have deployed our solution have increased their warehouse level productivity, locations visited by worker per hour or lines picked per hour by up to 30%, increased worker and asset productivity and efficiency, increased dock level efficiency, both truck in and outs by up to 30%. And also, as a result of all the initiatives related to safety, we've increased safety in these operations as well. So it's been pretty exciting, very easy to deploy, up and running within 2 to 3 weeks with a payback in less than 3 months, with annualized ROI that customers are reporting between 2x to 5x. And, finally, over the last year, we have deployed in a lot of apparel facilities, clothing, apparel, and then consumer electronics, e-commerce, food and beverage, CPG, and also more recently into factory logistics. So it's been a really exciting year for us, and we're really looking forward to getting out there and deploying more of these solutions in 2022.
Definitely, yeah, and it's great to hear that you guys have been growing very well, and you found success throughout the pandemic as well. It's good to hear things are advancing, and it sounds like the adoption rate is really picking up for utilizing this warehouse spatial intelligence. WSI, as you said, another acronym we can throw into our world.
Sure.
So. Why do you think now, the adoption rate is picking up for this spatial intelligence? Why are people becoming more in tune with it now?
So the whole pandemic has been just, for multiple, the negatives, of course, are clear. But in terms of if I look at where we are today and things that people are projecting into 2022 and beyond, I mean, the acceleration of e-commerce, the acute constraints on both on labor, transportation, and now space, and then the intent to increase inventory to develop some level of resiliency has changed the way that people are looking at what they have. And so rather than a conversation that took place in 2019, which was, how can I save costs? How can I, figure out some ways to reduce some assets? Now it's all about increasing capacity and just making sure that people can get product out to consumers. And, beyond the ports and all that stuff, looking into even until 2023, one of our investors, Prologis, is projecting this is going to go on till maybe end of 2023. So,
right.
So that's the reason why I think people are looking at what are my options? What is the most effective way that I can, work through this challenge over the next year, and also do it in a way that is more meaningful for the next 3 to 5 years. And that's why spatial intelligence is very complementary to the other initiatives and has therefore taken off from our side.
Very interesting. Yeah. And I think it's smart, just being aware of where things are and like you mentioned, the assets and even the workers and being able to see that and contribute to the overall productivity gains. I mean, it makes total sense to be able to utilize that and why people are getting more interested in it and especially utilizing it and attacking some of the issues that you mentioned. So very interesting stuff. And, talking a little bit about the future here and some predictions and so I have some predictions that you laid out yourself, which is pretty interesting. And so one of the predictions, which I thought was actually pretty interesting because, I think you mentioned, the pandemic and, this increase in demand in e-commerce. And, I think we've seen like a lot of more interest in robotics in a sense, but you're actually predicting that the adoption of robotics will slow down a bit. So why are you thinking that?
Okay. So I think, going back to the key drivers for supply chain execution, e-commerce, the labor constraints, transportation constraints, space constraints. So customers have two choices, and they're not orthogonal. They're very complementary, but essentially they have two choices. They may have more, but the ones that I will refer to are, they can either address those issues through robotics and automation, right? Which is what most of the industry is looking at. And, every morning you open the newspaper and someone's talking about a new set of warehouses that they have automated and so on and so forth.
Right.
And then the other approach that we are kind of, more favorable to is data and analytics. I think there's a lot of room for improvement in existing operations, and people have not still achieved that, right?
Okay.
And so our prediction is that over the next 3 to 5 years, as things start stabilizing into, some part of 2022, the focus will revert to plug and play solutions that are easy to deploy, fast payback and ROI. And that clearly bodes well for data and analytics-based solutions.
Right.
Commoditization of sensors, growth of cloud, AI, machine learning will accelerate that. Now, in terms of robotics, there are different levels of robotics, and that's something that people, when I say the prediction for 2022, I'm a big supporter of material transport robots. They will do well, like cobots, easy to deploy, they're easy to fund, and they're really in a way that can be integrated into a variety of different types of operations. So I think they will do well. Conveyors, the fully automated ASRS, systems that move a massive amount of products.
Yeah.
So yes, I will definitely see a lot of companies trying to do innovation with that. They will have some solutions for that they'll demonstrate to the ecosystem that it's possible. But only a few companies can afford the tens of millions of dollars of investment. Right. The ROI is unpredictable. It could take 5 to 10 years. The systems are inflexible. And then there's the other part that customers that we operate our WSI solutions in, they operate in fully automated warehouses. And we find it's very interesting that they end up spending a lot more on support, on planning, on trying to optimize the rest of the operations. And so that has to catch up as well. So our prediction here is that mobile transport will do well because it's, more of a plug and play. It's got a nice robotic as a service solution. And some of the more complex solutions, I think people are going to have maybe overestimated, and that forecast will be lower than what they expected.
Very interesting. Yeah. And I think you have a big point there about the ROI, and it's something that I've kind of been saying for a while, I think, is that, you have these pretty incredible, technological advances and innovations in some of the robotic spaces and stuff. But I think you really hit the nail on the head there that, there's only a certain amount of companies that can really afford to invest very heavily in these types of systems. And you mentioned the ASRS kind of systems, and they're very costly. So I think it's a pretty interesting point that you're saying that the adoption is going to slow down because the ROI is not necessarily going to be there for a lot of companies. And I think the other point you made is certainly a great one, where people may be, in a sense, rushing into robotics because it's like the hot thing or something, but they're not necessarily optimizing their operation and their process flows before they get into automating these processes. So it's a very interesting perspective and points there. And with that, I'm curious, how do you kind of see robotics, I guess, in a sense, playing out in the long term? You talked about realizing ROI 5 to 10 years maybe on some of these systems, but you're also kind of, it sounds like, in favor of more of the cobots and the AMRs interaction there and having easy deployments. But what do you think the long term is? I mean, a lot of people think we're going to end up with dark warehouses and this and that. I mean, where does your head kind of land on that?
Right. And by the way, there's one segment of the market, that at least two segments of the market, that are going to be looking at robotics very differently from what we have been operating in, and that's groceries and cold chain. Right. And that's the area where you're going to see a lot more, different types of things happening. So, but in terms of robotics, so here's where, obviously the core behind anything that happens in robotics is ironically very similar to we do, which is use a lot of analytics. And that analytics is driven from AI. As AI improves, the robots improve, right? So for example, today, the big question that everyone asks in robotics is picking, right? Like item level picking, so
Right.
out of a box, or gripping something, or vacuum picks, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, all of that is still dependent on how advanced the intelligence is in the robot, right? The sensors and the motion. So my expectation is, and the same thing goes with our level of, in the data and analytics too, is that what level of AI can I use? What type of data sets do I use, right? So in terms of robotics, there is clearly a significant opportunity for robotics and automation. The manufacturing industries have already shown that, right? That there is definitely a path that more tedious, more, mundane jobs will go towards robots, fixed robots, mobile robots, more automation will definitely come in. But I think the investment in this particular industry will need to be more thoughtful and incremental. And people need to really understand, I mean, there is definitely a driver of someone is trying to, like, for example, the large e-commerce players, they just need to get product out. And they most probably are looking at revenue profiles or profit profiles that are different from someone who's a third-party logistics company doing contract logistics for a consumer packaged good company, right? So very different type of economics. So plug-and-play solutions, small footprint, rapid setup, reconfiguration, easy to power, easy to manage in the cloud will do well. Therefore, cobots, AMRs, do well. More complex will definitely take time. Item-level robots, again, I mentioned to you, it really dependent on AI. Yeah. And so we'll see and there are other themes that I've seen, analogous to what we are seeing here. A lot of interest in self-driving cars, fully autonomous vehicles. Let me get them on a road. It's going to change the entire industry. Today, where we are is we're going from internal combustion engine to EV. And we're adding more intelligent sensors to those EV cars. And then we'll add more autonomy to them, and then keep on incrementally get to the point where all of that happens. And that's why, in the context of robotics and automation, it just has to be thoughtful and incremental rather than, I'm just going to go and just completely fully automate. That reality is at least, 5 to 10 years out.
Yeah, very interesting. And I think you have a great point there about the, like the piece picking robots and these arms with the grippers and things. And, I think the technology is pretty amazing what they've been able to do so far. But I certainly think it's, it's still a ways out to being able to really be a replacement for a human kind of picking. And I think a lot of it, like you mentioned, relies on the intelligence of the actual picker and the ability to be able to identify what they're picking, and through the AI and the machine learning and those types of things. And it'd be interesting to see how it grows, certainly. But I think you're kind of really spot on there with the length of time that's really going to take to realize those benefits. And I think it's something that's cool to see. And I think for the bigger companies, like you mentioned earlier, certainly can start to invest in that technology and be able to try and test those things and help those companies advance as well through the testing. But when you look at some of the smaller players in the market who, maybe are just getting into e-commerce or have just kind of, grown a lot in the last year and a half or so with the e-commerce explosion, or just other distributors that are just smaller companies, they can't really afford to be able to go after those types of things. So it kind of leans back to that, what you're talking about earlier with, being able to get things that are easily deployable, easily kind of usable right out of the box, plug and play. So really interesting point there. So, we talked a lot about the data and the optimization of that data within the warehouse environment as well, and how that's going to become very important. You mentioned about sensors and things of that nature, and, it's dealing in the realm that you guys deal in. But, we talked about WSI, and I mentioned that's another acronym there for our operational world. But, one of the big acronyms is WMS. So I'm curious, one of your other predictions is that there's going to be a large push to start to upgrade WMSs. And I think, before I ask you kind of, what do you think will be upgraded and things of that nature? I mean, why do you think that companies are kind of or have been at least holding on to their WMS systems and platforms for so long without trying to change or upgrade?
That's a really fascinating question, because it's the most amazing conversation we have with any customer we go into, because we walk in and we say we walk into a customer site and we talk about spatial intelligence and whatever acronym you can think of. But the first thing that really comes to mind is that how do you integrate with our WMS, right? And then they start telling us all the issues they have with their WMS, and it comes from the underlying driver for that is that changing or upgrading WMS is a huge time and financial investment for these guys, and carries operation risks. And so, the moment they have to do something to their WMS, and Kevin, it's still surprising to me that even the most advanced companies that have fully automated warehouses have warehouses which have got on-premise WMS, right? They're not even transitioned that to cloud. So the first challenge that WMS has that, how do they make it easier for customers to upgrade the capability? And the second part then is that transition them from on-premise to cloud. And then once you get to cloud, then you can do AI, right? Because doing AI on premises is really hard, right? It doesn't have the compute power, the data capability data analytics capability. So when we talk to customers, they'll tell us that, beyond just the core improvements that they're looking in WMS, inventory management, order picking, voice picking, shipping, and the other things that generically all the WMS providers, the softwares that they provide and can support, they're looking for workforce labor management, slotting, route optimization, dock and yard management, things that, generally the WMS companies, they call them extended values.
Okay.
And then where we kind of come in is that most WMS systems are based on what we call barcode scanning. The data capture occurs intermittently. So I scan the line, and I go pick it as an example. Or I receive and I scan and I drop it off, and then I scan it where I dropped off, right? So during that time where there's no visibility, there's no ability to understand what could have been optimized. We call it the space in between. Okay. And that ability to provide that information now allows you to slot better, replenish the high frequency moving, the fast moving goods that they are placed in a certain area. It's not only the picking side, it's also replenishment side of that. It's also the order forecasting of that. So all of that starts to come into play. Route optimizations come in. We find the routes that customers have deployed were done at once in 6 months, weren't changed. The slotting is done on an infrequent basis, right? But the order forecasts have changed. So all of that information, I think this idea that WMS companies are not able to provide, and albeit, there are companies that are making a lot of progress. But remember, it's a very fragmented industry, very mature, with a lot of legacy constraints.
Yeah.
So that's why companies like us are really attractive to customers, because we just consume the WMS data in our application. And so we have value proposition where you deploy us standalone, or we pull in data from WMS, or it could be from yard management or any of these kind of solutions. And the legacy component, we just pull in and analyze the combination in our platform. Now, eventually, the hope is that it'll get, there'll be open ecosystems, open APIs that everyone will provide. But the intent is that, that WMS has this inherent challenge of real-time operational visibility and insights that can be derived that they can't do really well.
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Very interesting, and I love that you said it's filling in, or these upgrades are filling in the space in between. And one thing that you mentioned there is it's driving the better slotting. So I want to talk about that a little more because I like slotting. I
Sure.
mean, I love it and I hate it. It's a lot of work to get it set up, but once it is good, it's really efficient. So talk to us a little bit about, because I'm totally well aware of, doing it, just every quarter, maybe once, twice a year, something like that. So talk to us a little bit about how the technology kind of works and helps companies be able to kind of almost like continuously keep up with their slotting and making sure that things are where they need to be.
Okay. So what we have found is that, in the context of slotting, clearly the first part is constrained by what types of products go into what type of slots, right? In the sense that, based on the shape of the product, the volume, the weight, and also safety constraints, right? So you may have some constraint, some boundary conditions that you put in an algorithm for that. Then the next part of the challenge becomes that what's the distance that the worker or whatever asset that you're using to pick that item, and that's where the challenge starts to come in, because what we find very interesting is that the fast moving items tend to be placed based on distance. The reality is that what should happen is you should look at both time and distance, and time, as it turns out, is based on congestion. So if I place two fast-moving items really close to the pickers, you will find congestion on the way and congestion on the way back.
Interesting.
It doesn't matter whether it's a cobot returning it or the worker returning it, you just find congestion. And so what you have to do is you have to set your algorithm and your item placements in such a way, and also the layout, that allows you to understand that what I'm trying to do is pick the fastest moving items with the least amount of distance and the least amount of time at different times during the day, because there might be certain things that I do in the morning and certain things I'm trying to do to meet my SLA, so service level agreement. So you got a whole variety of things that need to go into the algorithm. Then beyond that, then you go into the next challenge, which is I pick one item, then I have to pick a second item. So can I set up my slotting recommendation algorithm to take into account that my first pick and the second pick is based on my first pick? And so my first pick may be a fast moving item. My second pick may be also a fast moving item, or it may be a really, really slow item.
Okay.
Right. And then what happens is the seasonality comes in. You talked about the 6 months. So what you have to do is you have to actually take into account, the right way to do it is that you get the most updated sales forecast, or the forecast, that the demand forecast that gets combined with the WMS data, with the WSI data, that results in you factor in the seasonality or the type of sales that's going to take place over the next 1 week or 2 weeks. Ideally you want to do it literally on a weekly basis or a daily basis, but whatever that constraint is. And then what happens is you get some really interesting insights. For example, I've decided that I'm going to move my slow-moving items into a promotion mode this week or for the next 2 weeks. Ironically, those will become my fastest-moving items in those 2 weeks. So but then I need to factor in the first move, the second move. So the level of slotting that you can do, is dependent to a large extent on a lot of good data analytics. You combine order forecasting, WMS, and then this real-time data that you're collecting. And also, by the way, it changes based on layout changes that I make. I may move my zones differently. I might do certain things differently. So the idea that you can continuously improve it. Now, I can't obviously explicitly talk about a customer, but generically what we find is that customers start with a certain amount of locations visited per hour or lines picked per hour. We see that if you're monitoring the time and distance, looking at heat maps, you'll find certain aisles are congested. Move that process out. Now, and I'm always surprised that it's not just just move it in front and minimize distance. You have to factor in congestion and time, and that makes a lot of difference.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's an interesting point, because I think even myself, when I'm doing some sliding, I'm thinking, putting all the the fast items together. But the congestion point is really, really one that stands out there. And I think that's a great tip. And, obviously the location based and spatial intelligence can give you more insight into that, because you can see like where things are coming, like you mentioned, the assets, and are they on forklifts, or if it's people, where are they really kind of amassing at a point, and then adjust based on that. And I think the fact that the technology is getting to the point where you can easily kind of reslot and keep slotting almost continuously on a daily or weekly basis, as you mentioned, is really a testament to the productivity gains that you can see, because like you mentioned, maybe one day some slow moving items go on promo, and now they're fast moving items, like you mentioned, and that's not something that necessarily you would pick up if you're slotting on a quarterly basis or twice a year, once a year, something like that. It's not something you're going to pick up on those little nuances, and you're going to lose those small productivity gains throughout, which can add up to a lot of cost savings over time. So very interesting insights.
One more comment.
Sure.
One more comment, Kevin, to kind of build up one really important part. One important thing that we have seen, really interesting insight, is that slotting and picking also impacts replenishment. Right. And so now you've got the most items that you are picking also need to be replenished. Right. And now that impacts the way that your entire replenishment cycle. And so that while you're seeing, while we are reporting, the traditional KPIs are more like, I picked up more line items per, that's an important one. But you have a whole set of resources that can be optimized, space and assets and people that are replenishing those specific areas, and that no one really, we are not, I say not no one really, but we see so much opportunity for our customers to kind of link that all the way to the replenishment side, which then drives the truck inbound. So if I can slot, remember we have a solution we call Smart Dock, align the dock with the aisle, that will result in better replenishment all the way into the fastest, into the slotting. So if you can start thinking of using a more integrated solution, and all of that is based on near real-time data or real-time data. And that's something, an opportunity that we see being really interesting. Now, one caveat is that it's not a solution that, there are lots of other companies that do slotting, right? They do slotting with, there are geometrical formats, or they may have sales forecasts or other kinds of, I think where we are unique is that you're getting this real congestion, real distance traveled, real amount of resources that are moving and doing that function. And that makes the whole process a lot more.
Yeah, very interesting point. And I love what you said there about having the integration throughout the entire flow, and being able to actually assign that truck coming inbound to a door that is almost in line with the aisle where the product is actually going to go. I think that's something I never even thought about strategically trying to do. So it's very interesting, and the technology obviously is making it easier to be able to do those types of things. And it's those little types of productivity gains, I think, where technology really comes into play and makes it easier, because you can certainly, do data crunching and mining and all those different things manually yourself to try and figure that out. But that's like a full-time job there in itself. So very interesting how the technology is helping you do that. And I love the way it's thinking about that, and kind of flowing through and integrating from the truck coming inbound to exactly where it's going to go. And once it hits the dock, where it's going to go, and how is the fastest path and easiest path with less congestion available for that, and let's make that happen. So really interesting stuff, Vik, and I like the predictions for 2022, and so we're coming up on 2022 as well, and I know we're going to go back to in person at Modex. So why don't you tell us real quick a little bit about what to expect from Locix at Modex?
So at Modex, I think our the whole idea is to kind of demonstrate to customers how this entire integration of different types of data sets and how we analyze them with using spatial context, so that by the way, the data exists right now. It's not that people have that data set, but when you add the spatial context from Locix, all the way from the truck coming into the warehouse, what's the ETA for that, appointment scheduling, then the dock management, dock efficiency, then the forklifts or other AGVs that are allowed, that are used to store, to replenishment, to the order picking, and then all the way back to the outbound. So that integrated capability is what we are looking at showing at Modex. And albeit different customers are at different stages because they are approaching it, like I said, from an incremental plug and play approach. Some people have started with the dock, some people started with the slotting, some people started with, and also safety. That's another area that we'll be showcasing at Modex. What we have found is that the idea that where and when and why unsafe encounters and events takes place can change the way that you route your assets, forklifts, cobots, robots, workers. And that's really important because safety and productivity are generally inversely proportional. You can be very unsafe and very productive, but and that leads to accidents and other kinds of things. And so, we have a really interesting context, spatial context of these events that can lead to this vision of zero safety, zero tolerance, right? And we want to showcase that. We have some really good use cases we'll be showing there, that customers that were trying to increase picking efficiency also were able to make the facility safer because they had a spatial context for that.
Very interesting. And I'll be looking forward to seeing that at Modex as well, and kind of checking out what you guys got there at your booth. So,
and one last thing, we'll also kind of showcase the concept of, we have engagements where customers are using our spatial context where cobots, workers, and forklifts coexist in the same environment. Cobots know where they are, but the cobot does not know where the workers and the forklifts are. And so now this idea that you have spatial context over all three key resources, and the ability to optimize the overall operations in the context of even having these material transport robots, I think will be very interesting for a variety of folks who are looking at that combination of data analytics and robotics.
Got it. Okay. I would definitely be looking forward to that. So if people want to find out more information about Locix, how can they do that?
So www.locix.com is most likely the best place to start. And then there's contact information to connect with the right people at the company.
Okay, awesome. And we'll put that information on newwarehouse.com as well, so people can find you guys and find out more information. So Vik, thank you so much for coming on this show again, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you at Modex as well.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.